Hey viewers, welcome back to Ray of All Trades. Today we're working on an Arctic Cat 400. Nice looking quad. Complaint is a no start. So let's take a look and see. It's been sitting for a while, I was told. So it's in neutral right now. Run position is on. Let's go ahead and put the choke on. Feels like that downward is choke. Well, right now I can tell you that the battery's dead. Let's see. Let's put a jump box on it. Let's see what we get now. Spins over good. Compression actually sounds pretty decent. It's hard to tell without a gauge, obviously, but take off that filter real fast. Let's spray a little bit of carb cleaner in here, starting fluid, and see if it makes a difference in how it tries to start. Let's see if this will spray upside down. All right. Sounded like she ran on the fuel for a little bit. But it is running way too high. I'll try to turn that throttle down a little bit. There we go. And this was actually in the off position, the fuel was. Let's try it without the carb cleaner real quick. Give it a little. I'm pretty sure she's getting flooded now. So one of the things he mentioned was that gas was pouring out of this thing after he let it sit. Yeah, now I'm looking at a flooded problem. Okay, I'm gonna get that carburetor off of here. Let's turn this fuel off before I get too far. It starts, it runs. It sounded like it was running good, except for the fact that it was running too fast. So I'm fairly confident I'm looking at a fuel delivery issue. The very first thing I want to do then is clean out that carburetor. Being that he told me that all the fuel ran out of it, tells me that the choke was open. And now I can't get it to start by adding fuel, making me think that it's flooded. I can actually smell the gas. Let's put the battery on charge. Fuel is in the off position, the ignition is in the off position. And let's get to that carburetor and see if we can get it cleaned out. All right, so the right side of the bike doesn't have the exhaust pipe in the way. So I'm going to pull off the the right side of the bike doesn't have the exhaust in the way, so I'm going to pull that side off. The left side has the exhaust pipe on this one. So T30. This one's, that one's a Phillips head. Let's see, is there any other, where's these clips? Yep, there's a Phillips head. Screw right here. Let's take off the intake boot. Because of the curve of these things, it's real easy to get them backwards and twisted around. So I always try to put them down the same direction I take them off. Just keep that in mind. Okay, let's see if we can pull this out without pulling off this air box. Sometimes you have to release the air box to do so. If you're working on an older bike, I would suggest not trying to wrestle off the boots and stuff like that, because the plastic gets brittle over time. Let's get the battery disconnected before I start messing with all that gasoline. Let's get the intake boot pulled off, or disconnect the carburetor from the intake. I'm used to sitting right where you guys are. Let's see. Let's take that out the way. I can actually smell the gasoline. It's really bad. And I'm sure that my carb cleaner that I was spraying didn't help much. Let's see, that's usually a 10 millimeter. Yep. Okay, that's out the way. I've got my fuel turned off. Let's see, what else do I have? I have a fuel line coming in here. I have a choke rod that comes in right here. And then this right here is probably a vent. Let's pull the vent off. I don't want to disconnect my fuel line until I have a jar to drain it to. My choke is what appears to be a 13 millimeter possibly. Nope, that's a little bit loose. Let's try a 12. It should just literally unscrew from the carburetor. Not sure what you guys can see right now, but it's spring loaded. I'm calling it a choke, but really it's more of a Richiner circuit. So, and then when it comes out, it looks something like this. So it just threads right into there, comes out like there. Okay, and then the only thing left now is my fuel line. Right about now, you might be dripping fuel out of the carburetor because it's sitting funny. Anytime that something sits for a long period of time and somebody brings it to me, one of the first things I suspect is that the gasoline, the ethanol gasoline, separated. And even though that they put fresh fuel on top of it, I'll always drain off the bottom bit of gasoline at a minimum, because the water will separate to the bottom. So doesn't mean it always has it. I just always suspect it. Can't believe how many people get offended when I say that the ethanol caused it, but I can tell you right now that this gasoline smells horrible. So reserve is what I want, because that's the lowest in the tank, right? On is a spot in the tank that's a little bit higher. Reserve as a spot in the tank a little bit lower. And its purpose is so that you can get back to, to your base camp or whatever you want to call it. So let's drain off about a mason jar's worth. So far, I actually don't see any water in the bottom there. I know he worked on this thing for a little bit, so it's very possible he's already burned all that gasoline out of there, and all we have is a dirty carburetor, which should be awesome. Let's turn that fuel back off. In case anybody's wondering, yes, I have a pair of hose clamps very close by in the event that the shutoff valve didn't work. So we're going to let this fuel just sit over here and do what it's going to do. If it separates, then we'll know. If it doesn't separate, maybe we'll put it back in. Let's get this carb cleaned out. So this would be my accelerator pump. Sometimes those diaphragms get ruptured. This is going to be the fuel bowl. This is my mixture screw. Let's just start taking stuff apart and see what we come up with. So these things have a dot on them. Yes, they do. So these are actually JIS screwdrivers. I'm going to try out my new JIS screwdrivers. So when it looks like a Phillips head, but it has a little dot on the edge of it, that's actually a JIS screw. Japanese industrial standard. It has a slightly different shape than a Phillips head, believe it or not. So what I can tell you is that I've been using a Phillips head for decades now. Oh, it's really tight. And it wasn't until recently that I bought a set of JIS screwdrivers. Let me go get an impact driver. I'll be right back. And what I can tell you is that I've stripped out a whole lot of these type of screws by not having a JIS screwdriver. So this is an impact driver. When I hit this with a hammer, it's going to give a slight inwards pressure and turn at the same time. So you're just going to see me grab it and hold tight in. I'm just going to hit the end of it. There we go. Freed right up. Let's give this one a try. Now this screw right here, this Phillips head is not a JIS, but it is using the impact aspect of it. Felt like it turned, and it did. All right. So I was talking about that accelerator pump. There's the boot on top of it right there. And yep, I do see dirt down inside there. And these jets, oh, I wish y'all could smell this. It actually smells rancid. Anyway, what I noticed is that I didn't have any fuel come out of this thing when I flipped it over. Or if I did, it was very minimal. So this looks very dry inside here. So I'm kind of wondering if I was getting any fuel at all. because I thought it was flooded and it smelled really funny, but it's possible I just didn't have the volume of fuel that I needed. Of course, it ran on something, right? Y'all heard it. I don't know, maybe it all drained out and evaporated in the time it took me to move the camera around. Maybe I'll see it when I do the replay. Uh-oh. This might be indicative of my problem. That needle does not appear to be wanting to move out of there. That needle does not want to move out of there, so this is definitely our problem. There we go. Needle was stuck. So that means that we are going to give this thing a bath in the ultrasonic cleaner. Knowing that the needle was stuck and that let's see, that should be, is that main jet and idle jet? Anyway, I might have those backwards. But those are clogged up because I can't see which one's which right now. I need to get my glasses fixed. See, that screw was already loose. I don't think I loosened it. I hear as I'm pressing on the accelerator pump that it's squishing around in there. By the way, if you guys see one of these on your motorcycle, this is literally a accelerator pump. So it's almost like squirting extra fuel into the carburetor for a cold start condition, or even a warm start condition. I mean, depending upon when you needed extra fuel. So it's just literally a manual pump that you can inject some fuel into. So, be very gentle with these unless you have a rebuild kit. So, and all that does is move that diaphragm up and down. And then it pushes fuel right through here. So not popping out. Good. All right. Well, we'll leave it in there. Good. Now let's pull off the slide. I keep grabbing my favorite screwdrivers instead of the ones that belong. Well, good news and bad news. I mean, the bad news is that it's stuck. The good news is it's stuck. It means it's sealed up pretty well and it's not leaking air. There's no tears in it. So this is called the slide. So, and then that needle just needs to be cleaned, but we can do that outside of the ultrasonic cleaner. So we'll just leave that alone. Yeah, that's going to be your main jet and it's going to be your idle jet. I can see by the size of the holes. Let me see if I can get those out of there. Anytime you can pull the jets out, you'll be much better off because there's actually passageways on the side that you can't clean by just attacking straight on. Now that being said, if you can't get it out of there without doing damage, then absolutely, do it whichever direction you have to. So this is the bottom of the slide. Now let's give it a bath. All right, other than shooting the O-ring across the room and not being able to find it, it came out pretty clean. Let me finish up these jets real fast. There's that one. That one. Keep that close by in case I want to clean up any of these other passages. I do want to clean up the seat. Grab a little Scotch pad and just make sure that the ribs on this thing don't have any kind of burrs on them. Being careful not to touch the rubber part on the end of the needle. Make sure that drops in and out easily. I don't feel it sticking anywhere. Okay, let's see. Does that needle move now? Yep, sure does. Yep, seems to seal up pretty well. Slide side goes on just like that. So main jet. If you put it in backwards, this won't go on, so it's kind of easy to tell. Put on the idle jet. Let's see, that's it for this side, right? Yep. Go ahead and fasten this side. Yeah, that seal finally let loose. Kind of ironic, right when I didn't want it to. Okay. All right, so this is where I need that O-ring to sit. And then that's where that spring's gonna go, just like that. Yeah, because the spring actually sits inside that groove right there. Let's find an O-ring. And it fits perfectly. All right, that was a 3/32 by 15/64 by 9 1/28 128ths of an inch. Came in the nitrile O-ring assortment kit, SAE. So that's O-rings on. Let's put this on. Accelerator pump diaphragm, I'm guessing is what it's called. Then the spring. And then all of this is going to line up here. Snug those down for a second. Let's make sure this still works. Yeah, it's got good spring pressure coming back, and I can feel resistance, air resistance. That one's correct. The slide is going to slide in, and it's going to go into that that silver piece. Remember I said that the slide hits right here in the middle, that emulsion tube area. So usually it only goes in one way. All right, and see how I can't put it in that way because it's slightly off? So put it in that way. I bring that up because it's a very common problem on the little Chinese four-wheelers. You actually can put it in backwards, and it won't seat all the way down. It won't come all the way to the bottom. It'll sit up a little bit, and everybody complains that it's running too fast. And it's literally because the slide was put on backwards. You'd be surprised how many people get that wrong. You got a 50-50 shot. I know I've done it wrong. So the only thing I didn't take out and clean was the mixture screw. Mostly because I forgot, but that's the only thing we didn't take out. All right, so my audio died somewhere along the way. Basically, I took the idle speed adjustment, or the idle mixture adjustment, and I counted it in. I counted 2 3/4 turns in, pulled it out, pulled out the spring that holds it in place. We're just going to clean it with some carb cleaner. and then just put it back together. You can see how fine and delicate that tip is. Do not over tighten this. Just till it just touches, and then for me, I'm going to back it out 2 3/4 turns. Right there. So if I bring it to there, that's my 3/4. Here's my half. Okay, so now I need a half, 1, half, 2. Okay, we want to put this thing back together. The gasoline didn't really separate, so what was in there should have burned. I think it was literally just because the needle and seat were hung up in it, or it possibly had some water that started this whole process. Now let's see how well you and I can work together. First thing I'm going to do is put the choke back in so that I can slide it to the other side. It's going to thread in right here. I'm calling it a choke. It's really a rich inner circuit. Try to get it in a position where it's not in a bind. All right, let's leave that somewhat loose for a second while we figure out its position. Like that. We want it coming up at a slight upward angle like that. Just get it snug. Put your boot back on before we put that completely back together. So this vacuum line here goes back on here, and then this fuel line comes across and goes on to the back side of the carburetor over here. So fuel line coming on now. So fuel line sits right in there like that. Take and clamp that together. Breather line on here. And then I've got a throttle cable floating around here somewhere. Where are you at? So that's the starter, which is one of the reasons I disconnected the battery. Just so y'all know, if I was bumping into that and the key was on and I was hitting, voltage over to that thing, that'd be a whole lot of sparks occurring. There it is, I hear it. There's my throttle cable. That put in. That should be somewhere close to that. Let's see. Might need some fine-tuning adjustments there, but I was pretty close to where it was. Cover on, drop it in there, and then tighten up that screw. This right here, when it feeds up through over here, this is actually I might leave it down here. Anyway, this is your idle speed adjustment, so turn it for your idle speed. Before I tighten that down all the way, let's go ahead and get this boot put back on. Hopefully y'all can see it and I'm not blinding you, but I've got one clamp there and it's seated on right. I've got one clamp here and that's seated on right. And then of course I got one clamp here and that one's seated on right. So now that everything's sitting properly, let's go ahead and snug them all up. Air filter put back on. Hooked the battery back up, but it actually charged up a little faster than I thought it would, so I think we're going to be changing it. Charging up fast is not a good thing when it's a dead battery. So, let's put this on. That should be on. Whoa! Oh, you guys didn't see that. As soon as I turned this on, fuel started flying out of this thing over here. I'm guessing it's because I was pulling on that fuel line and it must have had a tear in it and it just opened it right up. Because it wasn't leaking before I touched it. That's better. Alright, let's see if it has enough juice to crank under its own power. Lights are good and bright. In the run position, enricher circuit is down. Fuel's already in the on position. It might actually go. Got a lot of gas coming out of somewhere. Let's see. Yep, coming right out of the overflow, which means that my needle and seat aren't sealing up properly. Which is kind of crazy, because we checked it. And I'm going to pull that carburetor out one more time. Y'all don't have to watch this, but I'll get it together. I'll bring you back as soon as I have it on the bench. Alright, got it back on the bench. It was full of gasoline because it was all dripping out. Very curious. So I should be able to blow air this direction. That works. If I flip it over, the float should now be in that position. I cannot blow air through that. So why is it coming out? Alright, let's get a better look at what's going on. So basically it's coming out of this overflow hose or hole. There is a screw that allows fuel to come out of this thing, but right now that was in the off position. When I opened it up, fuel came out, telling me that the bypass aspect of it is working, because I was controlling how much was coming out of here by the petcock on the gas tank. So once I shut that off and it stopped moving fuel, I opened up this one and more fuel came out, telling me that that was the bowl drain, and it actually worked. So for whatever reason, the float, needle, and seat are not stopping the excess fuel from coming in. A few things can cause that. Well, let's take a peek. Alright, so number one, this standpipe, because basically it's saying that the fuel had made it all the way up to here, got so high that it went over the top of this and drained out. So it's possible that this right here has a hole in it somewhere. Don't see one. It's also possible that the float is not floating. In other words, it gets filled up with gasoline and it won't float anymore. But whenever this fuel level comes up, it's supposed to stop the fuel from coming in. So if this didn't have air in it, instead it had liquid inside it, that would cause it. So let's check that. I don't believe that to be the problem, because generally you would still see the fluid inside it. You know, very rarely would it have drained all that out that quick, but let's take a peek and see. So if I dump this in here, I should see air bubbles coming up, and I don't. And they're floating on top of the gasoline. They're not getting filled up with gas and getting emptied out. So the needle, had it got stuck, would have done it. And this needle is sliding in and out of this thing super easy. So the only thing left would be either the tip of the needle or the seat. I mean, it's got a line around it, but it's not, it shouldn't be draining or leaking that bad. I mean, usually a line around it will cause it to leak slowly, but not that bad. So the only thing left would be that seat right there. So like I said, unless this right here has a hole. Doesn't appear to be a hole on that. Alright, let's mimic real life situation. I don't want it on the rack though, because I need to be able to see when it starts flowing. believe that it's full right now. I can shake it, and that would make it come up over the top of that overflow. But it's not leaking like it was. You guys see that? So, I mean, it's holding back fuel. All right, one more possibility. So remember I said that there could be debris, dirt getting on top of the, between the needle and the seat. Entirely possible. It is possible, however, that the inside of this fuel line is coming apart. And there you go. Case in point. I don't know if y'all can see that. Basically, there's cracks on the inside of here. I won't know until I play this back if you guys can see it or not. But anyway, there's quite a bit of cracks on the inside of this rubber, this line, and any one of those small particles when it comes off can be enough to get between the needle and the seat and hold that open. I mean, look how the bottom of this one's coming apart. Yep, there you go. So very likely that's our culprit. Let's get a new piece of fuel line. Put her back together and see how she runs with a new fuel line. Alright, got the carb put all back together, have the fuel turned on already, have the battery hooked back up, air boxes completely back on. See if it'll start on no enrichener. Wow, okay. Alright, let's see if we're leaking any fuel. Not leaking any fuel. I'm going to back this up to the door so that the exhaust fumes go outside, and let's put the plastic back on. be first gear. First gear. Second gear. There we go. Arctic Cat 4x4 400. There's my shift pattern. Carb rebuild. Got it back together with no parts except for the one that I lost, a little O-ring. It's running pretty good right now. Hope y'all got something out of the video. Really appreciate you hanging out. Let me know if you all figured out that the hose was what the problem was the first time. Appreciate y'all hanging out. Talk to you soon. Catch you on the next one.